Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have quite a few more people we are expecting to join. We're going to get started at 2:05. Try to get as many participants in on the beginning as possible. If you would like, you can drop your name and the name of your organization in the chat by way of introduction. And again, we will start at 2:05. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining today. We will start at 2:05. We're going to try to pick up as many participants as possible before we begin. Feel free to drop your name and the name of the organization in the chat. We encourage you all to get to know each other, share resources. Well, Mr. Gusick, we are holding strong at 8 participants. I know there are more people in year 2 than that, but maybe that's what we have for today. This recording will be available to people, so it can be shared to the rest of the cohort. Though I thought I understood this was a mandatory training, but maybe not. Everyone, we're going to get started at 2:05. In the meantime, feel free to drop your name and the name of your organization in the chat. Well, all right, my clock shows 2:05, so I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you for attending today's Technical Assistance webinar. The webinar is presented by Amity Foundation, acting as the third-party administrator for LA County's Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department and the CFCI Care Grants. The CFCI, or Care First Community Investment Grants, are the result of ballot measure J, voted in by LA County residents in 2020. Care First Community Investment Funds are intended to be invested directly into communities and alternatives to incarceration that address negative outcomes caused by racially driven criminal legal system inequities and long-term economic disinvestment. Today's webinar is being recorded. You do not have to be on camera. Understand that if you are on camera, your image may be captured in the recording. Staying on the webinar represents your consent to being recorded. Please note the following legal disclaimer. The material presented does not constitute legal advice and is only intended to provide information. Organizations and individuals should independently verify that any information presented is appropriate or applicable to their situation before acting on it. I'd like to introduce you to today's presenters. My name is Rebecca Gray, and I am the grant administrator for the third-party administrator. And I hope many of you are also familiar with Bradley Gusick. Bradley, you want to come on and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bradley Gusick, senior accountant in with Amity, working on the third-party administration, budgets, and accounting.
Thank you. At Amity, we incorporate teachings that center the community before we begin our work. Today, we will use the LA County Land Acknowledgement to recognize the price paid by individuals that has resulted in efforts such as Care First community investment. We recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kij, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in the genocide of the first peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. Thank you for attending today's Technical Assistance, Budgets with Bradley. I'm going to go on and pass it over to Bradley. If you have questions during the presentation, please drop them in the chat. I will use the chat to keep track of questions. If at the end we run out of questions in the chat, we are then happy to take your questions live. If we cannot answer your question today, that is possible, we will get back to you with an answer. So if you have questions you'd like answered today, please put them in the chat, and I'm going to hand it over to Bradley. Thank you.
Hello. So today we want to talk about budgets, the purpose of the budget, your importance in recording your actual expenditures compared to your budget, and as well as when you need to make changes to your budget, what is that process? And then we will end then with a Q&A. Next slide, please. So first is the purpose of budgets. So they are a planning tool, and they exist to plan for the future so that you have your path forward for your organization when it's talking about finance. So if you think about what are your future expenditures going to be, and then what do you need to do to accomplish and pay for those expenditures. So budgets in this case are not a spending limit. So it's not a budget as we would think about sometimes when in personal life, is that you might go out to eat and you'll say you have a budget of $20. But you're saying to yourself, I'm not going to spend more than that. But that's not, in this case, what the budgets are for. They're planning. If you go over it, you know, that just means that you didn't account for certain expenses, or sometimes prices change. But it's a spending, it's a plan, not a limit. Now, that being said, any funding received will stay the same regardless of the budget used. So for example, if you were to go over your budgets, the funding that you're receiving from the county will remain the same. Next slide, please. So this comes to the next step, which is with quarterly reporting, is reporting how much you did spend, your actual costs, to the budgeted amount. And this helps you track your project. This helps you determine where you are with your project, where you're going, all of these things. It can compare where you are in the project and where you expect it to be when you made the budget, and then be able to do the analysis on that. So spending is tracked on a yearly and full project basis. So recording your full spending is important even if you go over the budgeted amount, because maybe that next year, maybe year one, you overspent somewhere. Year two, you might underspend, but then you'll be on track for the project there. And it's important for that is because the county at the end of the project, after the end of the 3-year contract, if those funds were not spent, they can ask for them back. So under recording your expense year one and then being under budget for the next 2 years, say, you might have spent all the funds, but it looks like you haven't. So those are important things. So you want to, and the big part is you always want to know what your expenditures are, so that you can make good decisions regarding spending and activity, rather than having something be really less than what you're spending just because you want to match up with a budget. But next slide, please. I think a lot has seen this already. So this would be the budget expenditure form, and it would be by quarter as you go through. And then you'll have your budget that you put in, as well as telling you what your balance remaining is going to be. So this is our form for our standard quarterly reporting. Next slide, please. So when it comes to budget expenditures, now what the county may ask us to do is, make sure that those funds, what was expended on the expenditure form, that those actually happened. So this brings up budget expenditure backup. So financial backup refers to documents that show proof of expenses. This would include documents like invoices and receipts from purchases, purchase orders. It could be credit card statements, all of this sort of things. But backup is not required to be submitted with the quarterly reporting. However, it should be kept, as Amity will be spot checking expenses to ensure accuracy of the actuals submitted, so that we can be doing our due diligence as the third-party administrator. Next slide, please. So there's a situation where you have your budget, you have your expenses, and they are just completely out of line with each other. This could be the reason why you might want to revise your budget. This can be done every 6 months, but it might be that unforeseen costs have arisen. For example, data collection for reporting takes time and costs that may have not been in the original budget, because you have to have someone doing the reporting for your quarterly reporting, and maybe you didn't account for that originally. So you may want to put those costs. Costs of material and labor might have changed since the budget was created. We're looking at, budgets that could go, for 3 years, and everyone, you can see that gas prices might go up. Your electrical costs might go up. Your rent might go up. People, maybe they received raises. Maybe there's any sorts of things. As we all know, that things seem to just get more expensive every year. So, there might have been changes there. Focus of work may have shifted since the budget was created. This isn't like not a change in scope of work, but maybe if you have incentives for people to come to your program, maybe you think that might be a better use than, say, pamphlets. So those would be 2 different sorts of things But while still doing the same work, it just may have been a shift in the line item. Another thing to note is that new minimum wage requirements will be effective July 1st. The city of Los Angeles, it will be going up to $17.28 per hour. And for unincorporated Los Angeles County, it will be $16.90. So that's another thing that you may need to revise your budget for items like that, where the city or county or state, or if it's national, might be raising minimum wages. So next slide, please. So how do you make changes to your budget? If you need to make changes to your budget, there is a process. There's a form available that we will show in the next slide that can be submitted if a revision of the budget is needed. Budget items can be moved from line to line, including new line items. So if your original budget, you added a new position, so you didn't have that in your original budget, you could add that new line item for an employee that you may have that you did not account for when you initially made your budget. Now, the total amounts for each year must stay the same. So if it's a $50,000 budget, it has to stay that, but you can move from line item to line item, but you cannot move from year to year. So all years' budgets must equal each other. All 3 years must be the same total amount, but line items can change from year to year. And, but yeah, so the budget is a planning tool. It's not your spending limit. It's there to help you guide yourself throughout the contract. Expenditures are important to record so that we have an accurate picture of where you're going. So we've got the plan, then we've got the journey, and then if changes are need to be made so that you can make your budget still effective as a planning tool, then those changes can be made and submitted. Next slide, please. And this is the budget revision form. It would show when filled out when you request one. It'll have your current budget in columns for each year, and then they'll be able to fill out your adjusted amount. But that original amount and your revised amount must equal. And next slide, please. And this is where we would have any questions. Thank you for your time. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Also, if we cannot answer your question full during the webinar, or if when the webinar ends, you decided, oh, now I have a question that I wanted and you didn't think about to say that, you can email us at tpagrants@amityfdn.org. The questions and answers can also be found at amityfdn.org/TPA Q&A. The website being from there. And I believe recordings of this will also be up on that as well.
Correct. So I do believe that this has now changed. I believe it's you will receive an email in the communications you receive from your grant advocate, or maybe the newsletter about technical assistance that you receive from Mina. You're going to get links to all of these trainings. They are all recorded. You can look at them at your leisure. Does anybody have any questions about? There are no questions in the chat. So if anybody wants to come off mic and ask a question, you're welcome to do that. No. So again, there is a budget modification form. You can get that from your grant advocate. I believe all these materials are also available at the website. So those will be made available to you as well. If no one has any questions, we're going to go on and close out. Last call. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here today. Thank you for all of the important work you're doing. You know, I know that you're pretty deep into it now. You've been with us now for a while, but every time I hear about the incredible work that you and your organizations are doing, I have that Christmas morning feeling all over again about these funds, what they're meant to do, and what they're actually doing in the community. So thank you so much for everything that you are bringing. And have a great afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Bye.